Hi there. In today's lesson, we're going to be cloning our cube. We're going to learn a little bit about LODs, or level of detail, and we're going to merge in a master node and link all of our meshes and the collision mesh to the master node. Yeah, it sounds confusing now, but you'll have it down in a few minutes, I'm sure. Yeah, all right, you maggots, get ready to crawl through the mud. Nah, it's mostly painless. I'm just kidding. You don't have to climb up and over anything. But there are a few obstacles that stand in your way. So, lesson 3. Today we're going to learn to stick your node in a box, and we're going to learn about levels of detail. So, let's open up our Gmax model that we had been working on last time. And basically, we have a variety of things going on here. We've got our model that's already been textured, and we're ready to go with that. But in there's a thing called level of detail. All right, hold it for a second there. Let's talk about LODs. LOD stands for level of detail, and it's a system there and a lot of other video games use basically to show you things in detail when you're close to them and not so much detail when you're farther away. Let's take a look at this model right here next to me. This first model is called LOD0, and it's the model that you would see of the hula girl if you were close up to this statue. Now this one has been made a lot larger, so it looks a little more clunky, but trust me, when it's shrunk down to about 12 inches tall, it looks pretty good. If you back away from the actual hula girl model in world, at a certain number of feet, you're actually going to see a different model. Each their model has actually 3, or if you're in the case of a hoverboat, 4 different models that you see at different distances. And these are levels of detail. In this case, LOD1, and it's the second level of detail. And as you can see, that this hula girl isn't quite as nice as the LOD0 version. And as you continue to go farther away, you really don't need to see a whole lot of detail at all. So you end up with LOD2. LOD2 is something you would see from, I don't know, 30 meters away, and basically it's just a few polygons that sort of represent the shape. Even the base, if you notice, changes. It's like from a far distance, you really can't tell much of the difference between the first one and the farther one. And I mean, if I backed up way far away, you'd probably be able to see it better. But, oh, and then each model has a collision mesh. That's the thing that keeps you from walking through it. Simple collision meshes are probably better unless you need to stand something on top of this. Who really cares if you can put something on top of the hula girl or not? Probably just a flat plane on the ground or a little box would be more than enough. Now, for the box we're making today, it really doesn't matter. It only has, what, 12 polygons in the whole thing? 6 sides, 2 triangles each to make a box. Yeah, I mean, that's not many polygons at all. So we don't actually need to make a lower resolution model. But for most other things, you might. The way you do this is you make 3 separate models for each object. And hoverboats, you make a 4th one. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work, and it is. There are a variety of ways of doing that, but for this particular object that we're making today, it's a very simple object, and all of its levels of detail can be exactly the same. Um, so here we go. Let's go ahead and finish our model. So we're gonna right-click and convert to editable mesh on our model. You can do that in any of the windows, and we're going to hold our Shift key down. And well, I'm going to go to the top viewport, and I'm going to hold my Shift key down as I drag this to the right. Now, this thing makes a copy when you hold your Shift key down. And since I can move the whole box, we now have a copy. And it'll ask us what we want to name this copy. This is going to be indeed a copy of this object. And we are going to name this LOD1. 1. Let me show you what that looks like, just so you can see that. LOD1, I usually capitalize the darn thing. There's no space. And that line over there is just because I zoomed in and it's paused. So LOD1 and say OK. Now basically, the first one that we made, our original, is going to be the one you see close up. When you get so many meters away, you're going to see this model. I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and I'm going to drag this over here and let go of it. And this one, I'm going to name, it's going to come up with LOD02. I'm going to name it LOD just 2. Just keep things consistent. And say, basically, so it's going to look like that. And then say, OK. Now I have LOD2. Now I have three models, and if I hit zoom extents down here, remember that zooms us out, we should now see all three of them. We need one more. That's going to be the collision mesh. So I'm going to hold my shift key down and drag one more. This one I'm going to name COL, which is going to be short for collision. COL. I put a capital just because I like things to start with a capital letter. Say OK. I think you can use lowercase. Just can't use any spaces. And say OK. Now your collision mesh doesn't have to have a texture on it anyway, and it's just because I'm being lazy today. Next step, we're going to click back on the original cube. This was the first one. It's still in the center of our universe. And over on the right, you can also rename these. So I think this was named Cube or Box 1 or something like that. I've probably changed the name here. But basically, we're going to name it LOD0. So name this one LOD0. Now, let's see. Now we'll click off this. Okay, and before anything else goes wrong, let's go ahead and save our model. Right, and we're back. Now we're going to merge in the root node. Yes, you've heard about putting your node in a box. This is where we get to it. So let's get jiggy with it. Go to the File menu, and we are going to select Merge. Now, from the File menu, Merge. Now, this does, by the way, take into the fact that I probably should have told you in advance, you're going to need to download and unzip the files in the Furniture Builder toolkit. So you're going to need those. So if you haven't downloaded those already, could be a little bit of an issue there. I've already unzipped them and I put them into my Gmax folder out on my desktop. I have my Gmax Bootcamp folder, and inside there's a folder called Furniture Builder, because that's where I've uncompressed these files to. And there are a lot of files in there, but the one that we're going to be using today happens to be Furniture Builder Knickknack. And when you, it's actually the Hula Girl model, but we're only going to merge in one part. That's the root node or master node. So we click on that and we say open. This will show you a really confusing dialog box, or it should, if it ever does. There we go. Okay, I didn't actually click open. So here is what this model looks like. And the master node for this one happens to be this. I think the 498 was the original number in the catalog for this particular object. So anyway, it ends in HUL. Sometimes, depending on the kit you're going to have, they'll have different names in them. But in this case, the Knickknack one, what we want to do is click on it, and it will turn blue. Very pretty color. And then we will say OK. We don't want to have any of the other ones blue. Just OK. And that will put a little box into our scene. And we can see it down here. Here it is. And this is the master node. The master node has to fit inside our box. So put it pretty close to the ground level. Remember, the black line here from the front is going to be the ground level. You just put it inside the box a teeny bit, and that'll be good. Some models also have extremely large master nodes. If it happens to be really too large, there's this tool up here. This is the resize or shrink and grow tool, and basically you can grab that, click on your master node, and make it fit. If you make your master node too small, it will give you an error when you export, but it really doesn't matter. So, but basically we want it to be inside of our cube. That was just more for your reference, so as you start playing with things, you'll be all set. You only need to put it inside. If it sticks outside of the box, you'll get what's called a bounding box error. But you won't, because you're going to put it inside. It's going to be completely inside the box. All right, next step. It's time to put all of our objects back in the 0 position. So we're going to click on each object in turn, using the 4 arrow tool, and we're going to put them, and you could drag them, but it's much more accurate if you go down and use these tools at the bottom to make sure. Now our LOD0 is definitely at the 0 point, so we don't need to change that. And the other ones, though, are at different points, so we will need to definitely change probably X, and depending on how you moved it, you may need Y, but we're going to basically put them all so they're going to overlap in a big stack. And it's real important when you're putting models together to have them as close as you can to being in the center of the universe, for mostly because as you step away from things, you may have noticed this and there. Sometimes when you step away, especially from older objects, they not only change shape, but they move a little bit, especially if designers weren't very good at making things like some of my early models. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we are going to go ahead and we're going to link everything together. We're going to link things to the master node. So we have our three models, LOD0, LOD1, and LOD2, and we have our collision mesh, and we have this master node. And this is the way we glue them all together. First off, we're going to go up to this. This is called Select Objects, and it's right next to the Move and Relocate tool, or I don't know what you call that, Migrate tool. I don't know. What is this called? It's not telling me now. All right, and you should check this list and make sure that you have all these things. Do you have an LOD0? Do you have an LOD1? Do you have an LOD2? Once again, LOD0 is going to be seen close up, LOD1 when you're farther away, LOD2 at the maximum distance, and then after you get past LOD2 it like disappears. There's a collision mesh, and there is a hula master node. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to highlight everything except the master node. So collision, LOD0, LOD1, LOD2, etc., and we're going to select those. All right. They're all selected. You can move them all as one object right now if you grabbed it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up and get this little thing here. And just think of it as the 50 Shades of Gray tool. Here it is. It's got a little sort of binding link chain right there. That's an unlink in case you make a mistake. We're going to go ahead and click that tool. And now, but it doesn't know what to link it to. And I've always found it really hard to click on the master node because it happens to be inside the darn thing. So now that I've got the link tool, I'm going to go back over to the list and click on the list. And the only thing you should see in Select a Parent is the master node, because everything else is already selected. There's nothing else in our model. If you see something else there, you might actually have an extra box floating around somewhere. Anyway, we're going to go click on the hula node. We're going to click Link. Boom, we've done it. One thing I forgot to tell you to do was to check and make sure that all your objects are linked together to the master node. And I completely forgot to do this. So here's what we got to do. First off, go back up and select the Move and Select tool. That sort of clears off if we had the Link Node tool together. So once you've got that selected, then we're going to go right next to it to the list, which is right over here. We'll click on this. And you should still see all your items in the list the same way we saw them before. Your collision, LOD0, 1, 2, and the master node, which is down there. I didn't point at it very well. To make sure that they're actually linked, down here is a little checkbox, Display Subtree. And you want to check that little checkbox, and then the list will change. You should now see the master node at the top, and indented slightly will be all the other items that are linked to it. And they should appear in this order. Collision, because it's alphabetically first, LOD0, LOD1, and LOD2. If you see these in any other order, you probably spelled something wrong. Put a space in, put I don't know, a wrong number. Make sure they're in that order, because LOD0 is going to be the model that shows up when you're closest. This will happen as you build. As you start building other models, you'll name one of your LODs wrong, and suddenly LOD2 or something like that will appear when you're close, and LOD0 when you're far away, and it won't work. All right, so let's go back to the regular scheduled program. If we hit Zoom Extents, we are now done. We can go up and click on the Move tool. It'd probably be a good idea so you don't accidentally move something wrong. And we can save the model. Now, once again, when we save, that saves the Gmax model. It's not the model that's going to be used in Previewer. That's the next step. So that will be in our fourth and final part of this class.